people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. A fight of some significance set to go down later on this month on the 25th. Fathi versus Fortuin for what is a WBA Gold Super Bantamweight title. Super Bantamweight, that's 122 pounds. That's where Ellie Scottney holds the IBF. Yemi Mercado holds the WBC. Sigaline Lafarve holds the WBO. And Mayerline Rivas, full WBA champion. She's got the WBA. Fathi versus Fortuin will be for a lesser version of Mayerline Rivas' title, a secondary version of that WBA title. It was a little over a year ago. The WBA was ordered by the ABC Commission to reduce the number of secondary titles they have in circulation. Interim titles, gold titles, regular titles. And for over a year now, they've done that. They've phased out most of those belts, though not all of them. You still have Manuel Char's WBA regular title at heavyweight, David Morrell's regular title at super middleweight, Gervonta Davis's regular title at lightweight, and what appears to be this title, a WBA gold title. That's the relevance of this fight. The winner of Fathi versus Fortuin comes that much closer to challenging the winner of this weekend's fight, the fight between Mayerline Rivas, the champion, versus Erica Cruz, the challenger. Nastaran Fathi and Sheradine Fortuin are flying largely low on the radar. Nastaran Fathi, she's based out of the UAE. The Iranian-born UAE-based fighter will be taking on Sheradine Fortuin, who's from the Southern Cape, South Africa. The winner of the fight will, in effect, become WBA gold champion at 122 pounds. And this is what I'm always telling you about the super bantamweight division. It's a very deep division, a deep weight class, where the world titles are split 4 ways between 4 fighters, 4 champions, and there are a host of up-and-comers, some unbeaten, very talented. Sheradine Fortuin, who will be in action on the 25th, she's already seen action 2 times this year. She only fought once last year, but she's already fought 2 times this year. So she has no ring rust she needs to shake off ahead of this fight. Quality of competition is mostly pedestrian, given the depth at 122 pounds. Nastaran Fathi seems like a step up in class for Sheradine. That's how it looks. Nastaran Fathi, who was very, and I mean very, busy last year. She fought 5 times last year, and she's already seen action 3 times this year. So she, like Sheradine, has no ring rust she needs to shake off ahead of this match, having only ever suffered one loss so far to New Zealand's own Mia Motu, a split decision loss. And we are going to have to give her a closer look. The real virtue of this contest and winning a WBA gold title, that version of it, is it brings you that much closer to the full version of the title, and perhaps boxing on a bigger stage, on a bigger platform, in front of more people. Aside from that, having a WBA gold title is virtually useless. It's just a stepping stone, tantamount to a starter belt. If you want to make an even bigger splash and make even more money, you want to fight for the full title, the version of the title that will be on the line this weekend when Mayerline Rivas takes on Erica Cruz. That's got to be the aim, the end game, the goal. And I do think that's what it is. That's what's in it for the fighters. And I will have to give each one of them a closer look. We will talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. Men's super lightweight news ahead of his ring return opposite the ring Oscar Duarte. Ryan Garcia took to his social media and posted a caption that reads, "I always knew that if we did a pay-per-view, it would do great, and it did 1.2 million buys. I'm also aware enough that if you just put every fight on pay-per-view, you will do horrible numbers like between 150,000 and 200,000, losing your company money and robbing the fans and people who want to see you. You need to be selective. Stop robbing the fans with shitty pay-per-views. Ryan is echoing the sentiments I've often expressed here on the channel that when billing a fight as a box office fight, you do have to exercise some discretion in pursuit of what are a few more dollars. You may be shortchanging yourself, your broadcaster, and your fighter in the long run. Try and understand that when you bill a fight as a pay-per-view, you put a cap on how many eyes you can get on the fight. Putting it behind a paywall makes it less accessible to more people. This speaks to what we saw happen with the PBC on Fox and the PBC on Showtime. When they inked that landmark deal with Fox, their initial strategy was to bill about 4 to 5 annual pay-per-views on Fox and more pay-per-views on Showtime. Nobody in the industry was putting as many fights behind a paywall as the PBC on 2 separate major platforms. I think in the beginning they miscalculated. I think in the beginning they did it out of greed because the market was a little bit more stable and they had more money to play with, at least at that time. An annual budget from Fox, an annual budget from Showtime. So if they did it out of greed, at least in the beginning, and as the annual budget began to shrink, the budget at Fox, the budget at Showtime, they started doing it out of necessity. A fight like Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia, or Errol Spence Jr. versus Sean Porter, which were billed as pay-per-views on Fox, would have better serviced the network on regular Fox instead of pay-per-view. You could have got upwards of 1, 2, maybe even 3 million eyes on all of those fights. And those metrics, those numbers, they would have strengthened the relationship between the PBC and Fox on the premise that the PBC's fights are bringing Fox so many eyes. Then you ask yourself, if that's true, why didn't they do that? And it's because of greed. They chose to make a few more dollars on pay-per-view, billing the fight as a box office fight at the cost of all those eyes. It's greed. They were greedy. And they did the same thing on Showtime with Gervonta Davis's fights. A fight like Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz, you probably could have brought over 1 million eyes to the Showtime platform with that fight if it were on regular Showtime, but you put it on pay-per-view. You put it behind a paywall, and it didn't do astronomical numbers. So in pursuit of a few more dollars, you shortchanged your broadcaster out of metrics they could have got, and you shortchanged the fans. Mistakes were made, and if there seems to be an emphasis on bringing big metrics to your broadcast partner, it's because that strengthens the relationship between the broadcast partner and the promoter, to where the broadcaster is willing to spend even more money on your content because it's bringing them so many eyes. The people at Paramount, the people who were above Stefan Espinoza, Showtime Sports, they would not have decided to discard boxing content if they were getting the kind of views they wanted, but they weren't, so they decided they didn't need it. We saw the exact same thing happen at Fox the year before that. They decided they don't need boxing on their platform, and they weren't going to renew. Ryan Garcia is right. I don't often agree with everything Ryan says, but he is right about this. Then again, he's not saying anything here and now that I haven't already said the last 5 years. 150,000 or just north of 200,000, those aren't big numbers. Some saying that those were decent numbers for Gervonta Davis's fights. The median number for a Gervonta Davis fight is not what he did with Ryan Garcia earlier this year. On average, he's doing anywhere in between 100 to 200,000 buys, which really isn't much. And even if you got to make a little bit more money, in the long run, it is costing you. When the numbers for the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight finally came in, I expressed a sentiment on social media that the driving force for many of those numbers was Ryan Garcia and his social media following, and that sentiment was challenged by Gervonta Davis fans who asked, if Ryan's the reason it sold so much, then how come his next fight isn't a pay-per-view? Well, in a very general sense, pay-per-views are supposed to be used strategically, not all the time. Of course you could bill Garcia versus Duarte as a pay-per-view if you want to, but that's only going to draw so many eyes, so many buys. And that's what we've been seeing fight by fight with Gervonta, while his fans regale him as the best thing since sliced bread for selling 150 to 200,000. Those numbers didn't impress the people at Paramount. You have to factor in the quality of the content as well as the piracy that virtually everyone is battling these days as piracy is at an all-time high. Though even with piracy, you can still turn over a profit, bring in big buys and big money if you use pay-per-views strategically. It's not something you should have to resort to all the time, but that's essentially what happened at the PBC. And now moving forward, it looks a lot like virtually every fight they do is going to be a pay-per-view. There are 3 fight dates penciled in next year, 1 in January and 2 in February, and all 3 of them are pay-per-views.
Everybody's battling piracy. Anybody from the UFC to the WWE. Yet these organizations still manage to stay in the black because not everything they do relies on pay-per-view.
Mistakes were made in the past that very much affect the practices and the landscape in the present. At this point, they've got to build those fights as box office fights just to do them, just to survive. And that's based on miscalculations years ago.
Worse for them is that the market is going to correct itself. The big market reset, the great reset you're always hearing me talk about.
You keep putting fights behind a paywall, not a lot of people are buying. You know what might happen? You might get phased out. You might go under.
The market is going to correct itself whether you want to adhere to it or not, though if you don't, you're the one that's going to suffer.
Inflated purse demands from fighters and their managers, yeah, they've got to come down. They do.
You going to run your business into the ground trying to get those guys more money than they're actually good for?
Ryan is right. Even if you can make a little bit more money with, I don't know, 150,000 pay-per-views sold or 200,000, in the long run, it's costing you. It's costing you eyes.
Which will end up costing you money. Endorsement, sponsorship opportunities, because not many people know who these boxers are.
You used to see guys like Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard advertising Sprite commercials, Sugar Ray Leonard. I saw him in a commercial with Larry Holmes, advertising Range Rovers. Marvin Hagler, he used to sell anything from Pizza Hut pizza to Right Guard Sports Stick, because anything less would be uncivilized. And what about Big George Foreman? All those Meineke commercials. Big brands want to attach themselves to the athletes on the premise that the athletes are drawing attention to themselves. But you really can't do that if you end up behind a paywall prematurely, and many fighters are.
The populace is not as familiar with these fighters as they used to be. That's a part of it. Part of the why.
Strategic use of pay-per-views can still be lucrative, even in the face of rampant piracy, so long as an actual market exists for what it is you're selling, an actual grassroots demand. And oftentimes we see with some of these fights, nobody was asking for them.
It's like you're playing hard to get when what you're selling is hard to want.
In a word, Ryan Garcia is right. The powers that be have got to stop trying to rob the fans with these shitty pay-per-views. And just in keeping with the theme of all things Golden Boy Promotions, you may have heard 2 days ago that former Top Rank alum Arnold Barboza has decided to go all in with Golden Boy Promotions in what I think is going to be a good fit for him, the Southern California-based fighter fighting under the Golden Boy Promotions banner, Golden Boy, that has the inside track on the Mexican-American fans over there on the West Coast. I think they'll do good business. I think they'll do all right. Arnold ended up leaving Top Rank.
Top Rank didn't have anything for him to do. He wanted a Teofimo Lopez fight, but Teofimo wasn't interested in fighting him. I believe there was 1, if not 2, mandates for him to fight Jose Ramirez, former unified super lightweight champion Jose Ramirez, but Jose and Arnold are managed by the same guy. They're managed by Rick Merrigan.
And I said it then, that fight's not going to happen. Rick's not going to make 2 of his own boys fight each other. What I think Rick really wanted was for Regis Prograis, who was a free agent not but a few months ago. I think what Rick wanted and what Rick was banking on was Regis Prograis crossing over to the Top Rank side of things, because he seemed very much interested in where Regis would go. After that Jose Zepeda fight, and after he became a 2-time super lightweight champion, Rick seemed very much involved and engaged and interested in what Regis was going to do next.
An order came down for Regis Prograis to satisfy his mandatory challenger, Jose Ramirez, one of Rick's other fighters.
That was actually the second time the World Boxing Council had ordered them to fight. Years ago in 2018, that was the first time. And then, like now, the fight didn't happen. Jose Ramirez was arguing that he wanted more money. He wanted a better split.
In a nutshell, But I felt Jose doesn't really want that fight. And Rick's interest in Regis, his interest in him isn't in making a Jose Ramirez fight. What I felt he wanted was for Regis to go to Top Rank so he could swap out Jose for Arnold.
I felt that what Rick Merrigan was banking on was Regis Prograis signing to Top Rank for a Jose Ramirez fight, at which point he could swap out Jose for Arnold. Get Arnold the title shot because Jose doesn't really want to fight Regis. In truth, I don't think Jose wants to fight.
He's only been fighting once a year for the last 4 years. He only fought once last year, only once this year.
Underneath it all, that's what I think Rick Merrigan wanted. Get Regis to go to Top Rank for Jose, then swap out Jose for Arnold. But when that didn't happen and Regis ended up going to Matchroom, that left Arnold and Rick Merrigan holding the bag. There was nothing for Arnold to do at Top Rank. No one for him to fight.
And now he's at Golden Boy. At Golden Boy, you've got O'Hara Davies over there. You've got Ryan Garcia over there.
Boxing on the DAZN platform, he is also within arm's reach of some Matchroom fighters, some of Matchroom's 140-pound stallions, of which they have several: Jack Catterall, Hitcherson Richens,
Liam Botto, Stevie Sparks, Dalton Smith,
Regis Prograis. If he takes care of business against Devin Haney and delivers the knockout he's promising, he's on that side of the street, and even if he's not boxing under the Golden Boy Promotions banner, he is boxing on the same platform as Arnold Barboza. So these are some of the possibilities.
I think it's a good fit.
Arnold is supposed to be making his Golden Boy Promotions debut on the undercard of Ryan Garcia versus Oscar Duarte. We don't yet know who he's going to be fighting, though I'm sure Golden Boy can find him someone to keep busy with. Find him someone to fight.
They can.
Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya, he's taken to his social media and he's openly calling on what are PBC fighters that may now be orphaned. PBC refugees that don't have a platform to fight on since Showtime has left the sport of boxing. He's not making any bones about it. Any of those orphan fighters that need a home, he's willing to give them one.
He's not just taking in ex-top-ranked fighters to beef up his stable. He's willing to house some former PBC fighters as well, if they are willing to cross the street. And some of them might have to, just to get a fight, just to get some fight dates.
It's not condoning or condemning. That's reality. The coming year, the PBC may do a lot less shows than they have in previous instances, and it's because they don't have a broadcast partner to give them an annual budget to do all those fights throughout the calendar year. So some of those fighters might have to go to other places. They might float away, and one place they might land is the shores of Golden Boy Island.
Oscar can put some of those fighters to good use. He does need the bodies. He does have a major platform behind him.
And the fighters are going to need some place to fight if the PBC can't give them one.